this month we have an amazing photographer, Christina, who shoots weddings, portraits, family, people, stuff, anything that has to do with portraiture and people work. I met her kind of really by chance. I actually built her a wall, and that's how we met. It had nothing to do with photography, at least not on my end. And so that's how we met. And that wall is part of her marketing that she uses. She'll probably talk about that for running her business. And her talk today is geared towards how some tips and techniques on how to connect with your audience and also get going with the photography business. She's very successful. Her imagery is fantastic, but she's also got a lot of great advice on do's and don'ts for running a business or making some money with your photography. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Let me know if you can't hear me. I'm not a very loud person, so let me know if I need to speak up. So I just wanted to start covering a lot of stuff today. So hopefully, sorry, a little louder. It's totally up to you. If you can see it better with the lights dimmer.
All right.
Too dark?
Is that too dark?
No.
We can shut the lights off back here.
No, it's fine.
Oh, it's fine. That's good. They don't bother.
Yeah. So first I just want to share a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. My husband and I met there, and we ended up moving to Michigan in 2012. And that is when I started my photography business. In a new place with no connections. It wasn't easy, but I got plugged in, worked hard to get my brand out there, and I learned a lot in the process. My husband, Matt, and I have been married for over 9 years, and we have 2 boys, Luke, who is 4, and Ryan, who is 1. I am what they call a mompreneur. I don't know if you've heard of that term before. A mom plus entrepreneur. I take on no more than 10 weddings a year and some portrait sessions sprinkled in throughout the year because any more than that is just too hard to manage at this stage of life. Boys keep me very busy at home. I've been in business for 7 years as of last month. I've been doing photography for a total of 15 years. I started my photography more as a hobby back in high school on the yearbook committee. And I took beginner through advanced photography classes while in college. And I don't know about now, I'm sure they're doing some film, some digital, but it was all film classes when I started. So I really got to learn, do everything in the darkroom. So that was really fun, a lot of good education that way. And then I also did a Photoshop class, which really came in handy because now, I don't know if Lightroom was a thing back then, but now Lightroom is also popular, one of the more used software. So between the knowledge that I gained through college and a lot of self-teaching via online webinars led by more experienced photographers and years of hands-on practice, I decided to finally start my business in 2012. So one of the first questions to ask yourself before starting up any business, and then remind yourself of this over and over again, is why am I in business for myself? We all get into photography for different reasons, and if you're in this room, that means you're already passionate about some area of photography. It doesn't have to be weddings, it could be landscape, nature, anything. So what is it that really drives you and makes you come alive? For me, photography has always been an outlet to enjoy and experience God's creation in deeper ways, to experience nature and relationships with people in an intentional way. allowing me to see things that I would have missed without the creative drive to discover beauty through the lens. It's also an awesome joy and an opportunity to bless others by documenting big life moments like weddings and growing families. And if I'm honest, it's also a much needed time away from the daily grind of motherhood with two very needy and active young boys. So your why will look different than mine, of course, but take time to ask yourself why being or going into business for yourself matters. And then when the hard seasons come, remember why you started to begin with, so you keep pressing on. Find your specialty. In photography, you can be a generalist. You can shoot anything and everything, or you can narrow down the services you provide clients by selecting specialties. And specialties can be anything from weddings, maternity, newborns, families, children, seniors, landscape, real estate, fashion, product, and more. It took me many years to discover what it was that I was passionate about, and it turned out to be weddings, maternity, newborns, and families. I liked also the idea of shooting someone's wedding, and then as I get to know them and their family grows, I stay with them, and hopefully they come back to me. I get to know them and their family as they continue growing. So I stopped advertising things like senior sessions and children and all the other types of photography that I'm capable of shooting, but I wasn't passionate about it. There are many advantages to specializing in fewer areas of photography. It's more time for your own continuing education, as you can delve deeper into a few specialties versus trying to be the best at everything under the sun. You can also in turn offer more value to your clients and be seen as more knowledgeable in the area that they're interested in. So finding your target market is a big part of being in business. First, you have to realize that not everyone is your ideal client. And that's a hard thing going into photography because you're gonna get rejected, but over time, with each rejection, although it feels like a loss, you grow in your skill and confidence because of that, and realize that someone's no thanks just means that it's more time in your calendar, for someone else's, yes, I can't wait. And I've definitely had, I think everyone experiences that. So instead of getting bogged down by people who may not be interested, just realize there are people that are. So you have to believe in yourself and your business before you can also expect others to believe in you and your work. So doing some brainstorming, what does your ideal client care about? What do they value? What can you offer in your business that can solve a problem they're having? And how can you set yourself apart from your competition? Buying gear. We all have experience with buying gear, obviously. My taste, and I'm sure yours, your taste in gear, your knowledge of it, your budget for photography, mine has changed over the 15 years that I've been in photography. My first film camera was a hand-me-down 35 millimeter Minolta from my dad. And my first digital SLR was a Canon Rebel that now doesn't exist anymore. Very few people, myself included, start a business with lots of money to play with. So we all have to do the best with what we have. But learning to produce great images with beginner level equipment, you can start a business. And truly learning how to make a great image with something that maybe isn't a great piece of equipment, if you ever do get that piece of equipment later, it will just be that much better. So as your experience grows, so will your business. It took me 3 to 4 years to finally make a profit in photography, though I was working only part-time when I started. But once you start making enough money, you can slowly build your collection of gear the way you really want. And obviously, it's never good to go into debt, starting out too big, too fast. And once you figure out what your specialties are, you can then start to figure out what gear will best help you accomplish the images that you want to shoot. So after many years of practice shooting with both zoom and prime lenses, I discovered that professional grade prime lenses work best for me because they offer me sharper and creamy bokeh style that I seek in my portrait and wedding work. No matter how fancy or good a piece of equipment is, I've learned that no piece of equipment is perfect or without its learning curves. Lenses and cameras need to be calibrated and cleaned yearly to work their best. And I'm sure maybe all of you have heard of the Norman camera. I've gone there for calibration and such. Also, if you're a Canon member, you probably have heard of Canon Professional Services. And I ship sometimes my equipment to them, and they can clean it, they can calibrate it. So Nikon, I'm sure they have a similar thing. This is my current list of gear. I have a Canon 5D Mark IV. That's my main camera that I shoot with. And then now my backup camera is a Canon 6D. They're both full frame cameras. And then my lenses are the Canon 50mm, 135mm. The only zoom I decided to stay with was a 24-70. And then I've got a Sigma 35mm and 85mm. And then of course I have strobes, with transceivers, a large studio strobe. That's like the only studio strobe I use. It's a super large 50-inch square softbox, and I use that for my in-home studio. It's large, so it gives a great natural soft light, nothing harsh. So those are just some of the things. Now, showing only your best, learning to cull. This is a big part. When I started out photography, it was very common to overshoot, and then you see every image as your baby, and you don't want to delete it. So with time and experience, you learn to be more selective. It used to take me a week just to cull through photos from maternity sessions or newborn sessions and weddings. And now I can get it done in a single day without interruptions from my kids or anything. The right software also is a big part of that. It can save you so much time in the culling process. When I discovered, I don't know if anyone here has heard of Photo Mechanic. One? Yeah. Photo Mechanic, I downloaded the free trial and I was just amazed by it. And then I bought the full version and I just regretted not having done it sooner. The photos load so much faster in Photo Mechanic than in Lightroom. And it allows you to see the quality of the photo a lot faster so that you can decide even more quickly whether it's a keeper or not. Editing is another big part of photography. It used to be prior to Photoshop and Lightroom, you just take the best picture possible, and that's still very important to get things right in camera as much as possible. But nowadays, editing is also an important part of making those photos your style and just fixing anything that needs to be adjusted. So one of the biggest problems I see with newer and sometimes not so new photographers is the inconsistency in their work. Sometimes there's a mix up of in their portfolio, and that can show on the website or Instagram, and it could be dark images mixed up with some light images, or the color and the tone of some images just don't match some of the others. So having consistency in your work all the way around is a huge way to gain trust from prospective clients. People looking for a photographer for their portrait session or wedding day really want to know exactly what they can expect if they hire you. And this is why before you start to build a business and market your work, you need to be solid on your style, both your shooting style and also your editing style. Then also be selective with what you show on your website. It took me many years to figure that out because, like I said, I think all of us probably relate that you love all your images and you think this one's awesome too. And so you just start showing a lot, but it's good to really look at them closely. And it's what I've learned is a good idea to ask someone, especially someone who's been in the field a lot longer than you with more experience, to review your website or your portfolio and provide some honest feedback. And even if your styles and theirs don't match, or maybe you're not in the same genre of photography, that doesn't matter so much. It's just good to have an unbiased eye to look over your work. And then also to be open to receiving some constructive criticism so you can learn where you might need to improve. Text is getting smaller, so I'm gonna look at my paper here. So pricing. This is obviously another large part of photography. So the first year I started my business, I ran across a photography webinar hosted by a very successful senior photographer from another state. And unfortunately, I cannot remember her name. If I did research, I probably will find it. So in her webinar, she talked about the value of a digital image and why she focuses so highly on a printed product, along with why she sells her digitals for as much as she does. It shook my world. And that's because right now, the most popular thing is digital photography and people just giving away digitals for usually next to nothing. So her perspective was something fresh, but also kind of old school or traditional, so I really enjoyed listening to her. Ever since then, listening to that, I took the leap of faith and started putting a higher focus on selling printed product while pricing my digitals at a price point that I was happy about. And the reason I chose the pricing model is because it all comes down to being profitable and making the most use of my time per client. Because once they have the digitals, you really lose your chance to upsell your client. And if I wanted to be a boutique fine art photographer who specializes in tangible heirlooms and create an experience for my clients, I knew I'd have a hard time making that a reality if they had all the digitals for next to nothing, and also a print release to make as many prints as they wanted. I would likely never be able to successfully sell them albums or a large wall collection or finish their experience with something more tangible. I knew I wouldn't get as many clients this way, but I didn't care. I wanted the ones that I did get to truly value me and my work to the full. I also knew this structure would suit me well, as anyway I'm not able to accept as many portrait clients as it is, given I spend much of my focus on weddings, and I'm also a stay-at-home mother. Since starting, I set my price point for digital images at $1,000 and have made many sales this way. So I've learned that nothing is impossible. I learned also to be upfront about the value that I offer and my pricing via my website and in-person consultations, so that whoever inquires with me knows what most of my clients invest and what to expect. Starting in 2020, I'm going to begin offering more of a variety of digital packages so that those who want digitals but can't meet the $1,000 price point, for all of them can still select their favorites at a more budget-friendly option. And through that too, I've learned, and I've heard from other photographers, that just because you think you wouldn't purchase something doesn't mean that someone else won't. And also that you are not your own ideal client. So, meaning you're not your ideal client. They maybe have different tastes than you do. And that's what I've learned along the way too. So, learning how to sell. So additional to learning about how this photographer puts a high price point on her digitals, knowing the true value behind a digital and what it means when you give away a digital, I learned that one of the most important aspects of what helps to set me apart is in-person sales. And within the first year I was in business, I bought a refurbished projector, got a large projector screen that I could transport from my home studio to any client's home, and I learned so much starting out through just self-education and practice, including trials and errors. To my amazement, the first time I conducted an in-person sale for a child portrait session, I made over $1,000. I was in happy shock, but I did my best to just give a very cool, calm poker face and not be too excited. So that proved that I could make money doing this, and it was a great feeling. So I continue to meet in person with my clients and help them with their wall arrangements, albums, and more. And two of the biggest things I've learned about in-person sales: spending time with people face to face and finishing my time with them by providing them with ways to enjoy their memories, no more dusty, useless USB drives, is really important, and it leads to higher sales. It also takes practice, especially when you haven't had a job in sales before and you might not be the most outgoing person. I've learned to be quiet and listen, and when to speak. Many clients make their biggest purchases when given time to process it. It's a balance, but I've grown to enjoy the challenge of it. So, lots of big topics here. I'm just covering a little bit of everything. But marketing is another one. It's Facebook, Instagram, blogging. It's all about SEO. Owning and running a photography business isn't what it used to be. If you aren't present on social media, in a lot of ways you need to be if you're growing a business. Plus, it's also free advertising, so why wouldn't you be? These days, people will either find you via a Google search on Facebook or via Instagram for the most part. Regular blogging on your website can impact SEO greatly, along with regular use of social media platforms. The more relevant content you put out on the World Wide Web, the more you're in effect telling huge search engines like Google, hey, look at me, I'm relevant and I'm worth knowing about. I can't tell you how many people find me on Google, but it's taken a few years of consistent work on my website, making sure it was updated with friendly interfaces for mobile, etc. Plus the consistent work into sharing photos on social media and engaging with people on those platforms. My website now shows up on page 1 of Google searches for photographers in my area. I used to, and I still do, maybe you do too, I'm not sure. You get phone calls from automated systems trying to sell placement on page 1 of Google. I used to want that so badly because I knew if I made it to page 1, there was a greater likelihood that people would contact my business. I didn't have that kind of money that it takes every month to accomplish that, so instead I did my part and it paid off. Social media can be so frustrating and so time consuming, and trust me, I get it. I still struggle with finding a balance so that I control technology and it doesn't control me. But if you're like me and most other people, then you probably don't have oodles of cash laying around to dish out to someone to do all the work for you. So take little steps, and more than anything, just stay consistent. Stay alive online, engage with your audience, and soon enough you will reap the benefits. And this is a short one because it's sweet and to the point. A website, you can't really have a business without one. An audience or a website, the best thing for your website and your homepage is to really grab your audience's attention in the first 30 seconds. So anything that is too much text on one page as soon as you get to your website, or too many photos and not enough text, that's why it's good to just have a second or third person look at your website, make sure that it's grabbing their attention as quickly as possible, because people generally don't spend a whole lot of time on the homepage of your website. They might just click off and go on. So that's a hard part of it, but an important. And then also having good copywriting, I've learned is a very good, not rattling on and on, making it concise, and having something that shows who you are, what you do, make it easy for people to know why they should pursue you, or maybe why it won't work out for them. So show value without overwhelming them, keep them curious. And also, throughout the years, I've learned that it's better not to put your entire price menu on your website. A lot of times people will look at that and then they'll become laser-eyed focused on your price. And your value is much more than just your price point or your pricing. So instead, display your price point, display where you start at, or a range. So that's what I do with my own website. I just say my prices for sessions start at such and such, and clients can expect to invest between here and here. And then if that doesn't work for them, then they can move on. If it does, then they can reach out. And that way, to me, it's like you're not wasting their time and they're not wasting your time, kind of a deal. You don't get all these phone calls and such, or you meet in person with them, that takes even more time. So it's good to know that you're being clear with everyone. And then creating contact forms and questionnaires, give them easy ways to get in touch with you. And displaying client testimonials is always a good thing. If you can display that on your website, give them a reason to reach out to you and show people clients that you've worked with and what they say about you. Reviews are really big, and people read them. They really want to know, what other people thought about you and your business. So advertising. There's two kinds of advertising: paid advertising and free advertising. So some examples of that are for paid advertising, like trade shows, wedding websites or other websites. You can pay magazines, newspaper, billboard, your local chamber of commerce, and then another idea is hiring a professional to help you create a branding video. Those are all ways to do paid advertising. But there's also free advertising, like free listings on websites, like The Knot, connecting with local businesses to ask if you can advertise your special event or leave some business cards with them. So those are different ideas. And currently, I advertise at some Grand Rapids area bridal shows. I also advertise on the Knot website, a wedding website, and also via my local Rockford Chamber of Commerce. When I started out, I didn't know where to start advertising. It's expensive, but I knew I needed to invest in it in order to get my name out there and grow my business, especially coming to a place where nobody knew me. So I knew I had to pay, how's the saying go? It makes money to, yes, it takes money to make money, thank you. So the first big investment I made was signing up as a vendor on weddingwire.com, a wedding website. It was about $700 at the time, and then a whole year later, I saw zero business as a result of that. So obviously nobody likes to waste money. I was annoyed, and I was bummed, but I moved on. Then I spent about $800 to $900 at a women's expo in Grand Rapids as a vendor, primarily to market my portrait sessions. And I ended up booking 2 weddings out of that and about 1 or 2 portrait sessions. For trade shows, I always look at it as if I can book 1 or 2 clients, I've paid off the show, and so it's worth it to me. Anything more than that, like, great. So that worked out. I knew if I wanted to make more money, I needed to try out a wedding show. So I did. I did 2 shows in January of 2018, and it turned out that bridal shows worked really good for me. I booked most of my weddings from this year through those shows. I've done some Facebook ads, but I haven't seen enough of a result from that to warrant spending too much money on that advertising method. And print advertising is also very pricey, so I haven't put a whole lot of money into that. But I still like trying new advertising methods. Everyone has a certain budget for these things. I've learned that it's good just to limit myself to 1 new thing a year. See if it works, kind of test it out. If it works, great. I'll do it the next year. If it doesn't, maybe move on to something else.
Christina,
Yes.
are there any organizations that you belong to that might have a local listing of portrait or wedding photographers that people go to?
So, like the Chamber of Commerce, the Rockford Chamber of Commerce, they have, I believe, a magazine that comes out once or twice a year, and they have that. I mean, there's a lot of magazines and newspapers do that.
Okay.
And I've looked into that. For me, it's a little too much because you have to pay, I don't know, however long, you know, if it comes out every week or every month, you're paying that every single time, usually. But usually, yes, there are lots of places that you can do that. So this is actually the wall, both of these pictures. This is the wall that Joe helped me create, or he created it. And then, so those are my bridal show setups. And then this in the middle is just an example, my Rockford Chamber of Commerce that I'm a part of. It's financially, it's super feasible. I think it's like $200 a year. And about once or twice a year, they let the members like write an article about any anniversaries or new hires, and there's never a new hire. I'm the only person that works for Seamless for photography. But I always have a business anniversary, so I figured this is a great time to, again, put my brand out there. So that was last month, just a little article write-up about myself, and so the community kind of can get to know me more, and also kind of putting a face to a name kind of thing. So networking, that's another huge thing about business, and I don't know about you, but that's not one of my most, you know, favorite things to do, but I've gotten to, I guess, get more comfortable with it, and but also understand the value behind it. So getting to know fellow business owners in your town, that's also important, not just people that may be clients, but actually other business owners. So getting plugged into some kind of networking business groups, join your local chamber of commerce to get to know other businesses and put a friendly face to your own business, volunteering your time. Networking takes time and energy, but is vital to growing any business, especially as was in my case when you're brand new to an area. And you just never know who might refer you to someone else because you took the time to put yourself out there. Another thing, so I don't know if any of you have heard of a styled shoot. Yeah. So this is pretty big in like the wedding industry, but I certainly grew a lot doing styled shoots. It's basically a photo shoot that is put together for the reason of building up your photography portfolio, networking with other businesses, and putting your brand out there. These styled shoots include models instead of paying clients, and the models are not anything fancy. It could be friends, it could be an actual husband and wife, or it could be whoever that's willing to spend the time to be photographed. Everyone pitches in their time and creative talent, and then as a photographer you take the photos and you provide them for everyone involved, so they have photos of your work, and then when any of those photos are shared on social media, you tag each other and give credit to their work. Participating in styled shoots is a great way to get to know others in your industry. For example, styled wedding shoots, you get to know other wedding vendors that become familiar with your work and vice versa. And then share the photos you take with online wedding and other websites for a chance to get featured. I've done this many times, it's a lot of work, but it's been a great way to get like featured. One of the ones that I got featured on that I was excited about was Southern Wedding Magazine. I was kind of surprised because we're not in the South, but it's a good, kind of a well-known magazine. So things like that is fun because it allows your work to have a little bit greater of a reach even than just your little region. And it's also great for SEO purposes. So anytime your name or a link to your website is on someone else's website, that's also really good. And it's basically telling Google or any search engine that this business is worth looking at. all I have. Hopefully some of this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Have you made relationships with different venues, or are there like I don't know, are there any contracts that you have, or have you heard of folks contracting with certain venues that they'll recommend you, etc.? How does that work?
I have tried with like a venue that's really close to my house. I ended up shooting a wedding there, and I haven't ever had that connection where I know that some photographers, they may have like an album that stays there, and then the vendors or the venue can show their clients that. So I don't personally have any of that solid kind of a partnership, but a lot of venues will sometimes add you to like their preferred vendor list on their website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's another good thing. So there's always, and reaching out, I mean, I've learned in this business, the worst they can say is no. So reaching out and seeing what they say, but things like that help. Just kind of put your business out there in different places. Yes.
Do you put your signature on your pictures?
I don't. I used to do that, but then I started seeing that. I think do you mean digital?
Yeah, digital and your print, specifically your print.
Okay. So prints, no. That's because I want, if they're paying for print, that's their property, so to speak, not the raw image itself, but it's something that's for them, and so I want them to be able to frame it and not have anything. What I could, sometimes I do is put something on the back, whether it be a stamp of my logo or something, and that way, years down the road, maybe they forget who took the picture, at least that's always there. So that's always an option for me, is putting it on the back. And as far as digitals, there's not really a right or wrong answer to that. I mean, a lot of people put their logo or watermark on a photo, and that's always good. It's probably the best thing to do because somebody could easily copy and use that photo somewhere else. So it is good to do that. But I've learned as far as like people trying to steal images, if it's small enough of an image, the quality's really not going to be that great if somebody were to do that. But a lot of times it's going to happen either way, and people can learn how to Photoshop the watermark off if they want. But yeah.
Are you printing your own images?
No. I actually, there's a lab, I don't know if you've heard of ProLab Express. It's in Grand Rapids. I forgot the area, but we're actually not too far from it here. And they do a really good job. I've never had any issues with like everything the way it looks on my screen, it prints out exactly the way that I like edited it, and so some people have where they check off the bar that says color correct my image, but to me that takes the control out of your hands and you're giving it to them. So I've chosen, just from me to them, and it comes out perfect. And the same for canvas wraps. I use a different company that does the canvas wraps that I'm really happy with, making sure that it comes out the way I want it to.
You said you sell mostly prints, but if you have a client that wants just digital,
Yep.
do you work with them on that?
Yes, and there are a lot of people that sometimes they want both, but a lot of people are set on the digitals, and it totally makes sense. And I always say, like, it's good to have the digitals because then you have an archive of those photos for years to come. So I definitely do, offer digitals to anyone and everyone.
But you have no control over where they're gonna send them to print. They could
Right.
send them over to
Right.
Walgreens and
Yes.
say, look at this,
So-
and it turns out awful, but your name
Well,
is
what I
associated
do
with it.
to kind of, you know, I kind of, in my print release, where this is the release that they have to show to wherever they send it to print, I always suggest, here are the places that I would recommend, for the best possible quality. And then I also give the option, if you would like me to print it, you can always reach out to me, but at least I've put that out there, so that if they choose something else, they'll realize like, well, she did give me these recommendations. So, yeah, for sure. Yes.
Are the, when you're working with the client and they're selecting their photos that they want, what about framing? Do you take care of that for them, or do sometimes they just want the prints and they do the framing? How does that
Kind of
usually work?
both.
Kind of both.
So during my like in-person sales, when I'm with them, let's say I'm at their house, instead of a laptop, I have a iPad, and it hooks up to my projector.
Mhm.
And there's a software on there that actually I could plug in their photos, and let's say, like if you could visualize a living room or something, and then I could plug in their photos and frame it,
Gotcha.
and then I can lay it out however I want, if it's a collection, so they see exactly how it would look.
Mhm.
And then as far as frames, I do like have a company that
Mhm.
I do framing with, so I show them like examples, physical examples of what they look like, and then if they wanna do that, they can purchase them through me, otherwise, yeah, go with